Hi everyone, welcome back to Newegg TV. My name is Paul, and today we're going to be doing an overview of this Gigabyte 990FXA-UD5 motherboard featuring the AM3 Plus, AMD's newest socket for their AM3 Plus CPUs, as well as the 990FX chipset. So as usual, let's start off with a closer look at the motherboard box itself. You can see down here, Gigabyte has built this board with their twice the copper PCB that they are famous for. Also, this is AM3 Plus CPU ready, and that is AMD's new line of Bulldozer AM3 Plus CPUs. Those are not available as of the filming of this video, but they will be, so you can be forward compatible with this motherboard. Since you cannot currently purchase an AM3 Plus Bulldozer CPU, you can still use this motherboard with their existing line of AM3 CPUs. And if you're interested, you can check out the Gigabyte website for CPUs on the AM3 platform right now that are compatible with this motherboard. So there you go. It will support unlocking of FX processors and overclocking and that sort of thing. Also the 9 series chipset, which features a bunch of native input-outputs, which we'll get into once we actually get the board out of the box. Also, this board features ATI Crossfire X technology, so you can run a double, well, it still says ATI, that should be AMD Crossfire X technology for using 2 AMD CPUs. Also supports NVIDIA SLI, so you can set up a 2-card NVIDIA SLI solution using this board. Also, all of Gigabyte's features that they like to add, which their 50,000 plus hour Japanese solid caps, ferrite core chokes, as well as their high quality 108 decibel signal to noise ratio sound for especially optimized for Blu-ray playback. And of course, this has a new EFI BIOS, which will support booting from hard drives larger than 2.2 terabytes. And now let's take this out and see what comes inside the box. First off, we have a nice full color bit of marketing material here, which is a little teaser for Bulldozer performance, but some information there on some of the technology included with the board, as well as some additional information on other AMD AM3 Plus motherboards there on the back. So you can check out all the other boards that you didn't buy since you're looking at a 990FXA-UD5 here. But let's take a look at the accessories we have included. I'll start with the basics. Here are serial ATA cables. These are serial ATA revision 3 compatible, 6 gigabit per second. You get 4 total. They're all black, and 2 of them have L brackets on one end. We also have a 2-way SLI bridge there for those of you running 2-way SLI. We also have a 3-way SLI bridge right there, which leads me to believe, yes, this motherboard does support 3-way SLI. It also supports 3-way Crossfire X. So those of you looking to run multiple video cards, this board might be a good choice for you. Here we have your input-output shield. They are all color-coded on the back, so you can tell which ports are which. That goes on the back of your case. We have a couple stickers included also for your case, Gigabyte and Dolby Home Theater. We also have, of course, the all-important motherboard manual. Make sure you keep this on hand while you're doing your build. And there is your Gigabyte installation, driver installation disk, as well as some added software and utilities. Very important to have this. It's usually best to download the latest drivers from the Gigabyte website, but keep that on hand, especially if Windows does not recognize your network interface card right off the bat. Also, we have a multilingual installation guidebook for those of you who don't have English as a first language. And finally, we have the motherboard itself. Let me get this out of the anti-static bag, and then we will go over it in detail. And now we have the motherboard out. Here is a look at the back of it, just so you can see it is a flat black PCB, and all of our heat sinks on the board are mounted with spring-loaded Phillips head screws. So easy enough to remove those if it becomes necessary to. And let's look around to the front so you can get a nice look at the board in general. It is pretty much black on black as far as most of the ports in the PCB goes. And we also have some gray heat sinks that you can see there, and some blue highlights going on as well, which matches nicely with the printing on the caps. Very nice looking board overall, I must say. And let's go over all the ports and stuff in detail. We'll start down here in the bottom right. While we're down here, I should mention there's a 4-pin system fan header you can plug in. It's 4 pins, so it's PWM controllable. Next up right here, we have our input-output headers for the front of your case, so you can plug in your power and hard drive activity lights and all that good stuff. They are color-coded, and there's a little diagram right underneath to help you plug those in. Next to that is a TPM module header. Next to that is a USB 3.0 front panel connector. So if your computer case has USB 3.0 on the front and a motherboard header, you can plug it right in there. Next to that, we have 1, 2, 3 USB 2.0 front panel connectors. As you mentioned, this motherboard has 14 total USB 2.0 slots, and 6 of them are available via these front panel headers right there. Moving right along, we have a COM port, so you can connect your serial devices. Next to that is a 3-pin fan header, so standard case fan header right there you can plug in. Next to that, we have a FireWire 1394 connector, and that has a little cap over it just to keep it protected and probably keep you from plugging in a USB port there. Next to that, we have an front panel audio header, HD audio capable, so you can plug that in right there and enable your front panel mic and headphone jacks. Next up, let's talk about our PCI Express area. You can see all the ports are right here. We have plenty of PCI Express connectivity. Starting up right up at the top, we have a little PCI Express 1-speed slot. And next is going to be where the action is. That's these 3 slots right here, spaced with double spacing. The top one here is a 16-speed PCI Express slot. That's where you're going to plug in your main video card. If you're going to run 2-way SLI Crossfire, you'll use this one. That's also a 16-speed PCI Express slot. And then finally, double spaced down here, we have an 8-speed PCI Express slot. So that is where you will run all 3 of your video cards if you're going to run 3-way Crossfire or SLI. In between these 3, we have 2 4-speed PCI Express slots. They're 16-speed physical slots, but they're wired for 4-speed. So you can plug in additional devices there if you're not covering that up with all of your video cards. Finally, down here at the bottom, we have a standard PCI slot for a legacy device. If you have an older PCI device, you can plug it in right there. Let's move along over to this side of the board. We can see our Southbridge heatsink with the Gigabyte logo on it. That is the SB950 Southbridge, which is also from AMD, and that controls a bunch of serial ATA. We have no less than 6 serial ATA revision 3 6 gigabit per second ports controlled by that Southbridge chipset. So all 6 are right here, all of the black serial ATA connectors there, all 6 gigabit per second. And if that's not enough for you, we have 2 more right here, and these are controlled by an add-on Marvell 88SE9172 chip. Those are also 6 gigabit per second. So 8 total SATA revision 3 ports right there, and there's 2 more on the back that I'll show you once I get around to the back. So if you like serial ATA revision 3 6 gig per second ports, you have just as many as I've ever seen on a single board right here. But we shall continue right along and move up the side here to our 24-pin standard power connector that you should route from your power supply. Right above that, we have another 3-pin system fan header, so you can plug in another system fan. And then next to that, we have our DDR3 DIMM slots. We have 4 slots total. You want to plug in 1.5 volt DDR3 DIMMs to those slots. You can have up to 32 gigs total memory installed. That is if you can get your hands on some 8 gig DIMMs. But that being said, it does support DDR3 overclock speeds up to 2000 megahertz. Bear in mind, if you want overclock speeds of 1866 or 2000, you will need an AM3 Plus actual CPU in that socket. So before then, you can get up to 1600 at least without that. And you want to use dual channel memory, so be sure to plug in at least 2 sticks at once. Finally, right over here, we have our AM3 Plus socket. If you don't know how to tell what an AM3 Plus socket looks like, it's pretty easy. They're black. The black socket indicates AM3 Plus. Right above and below it, you can see your brackets here to connect your heatsink fan. And then over here to the left, we have our power delivery VRM area, and that is 8+2 phase power delivery system that Gigabyte has set up. We can see a heatsink right above that, as well as a heatsink right down here. This one is on the 990FX chipset, northbridge, and there's a heat pipe going through those to make sure you get plenty of heat dissipation. Right up here at the top is our CPU fan header. That's a 4-pin header. That's where you plug in your CPU fan. And then over here to the left of the heatsink is our 8-pin EPS power connector, so you can plug in your supplemental CPU power to that from your power supply. And finally, let's move on to the outputs on the back of the motherboard. You'll see all these red ports here. If you remember, we have 14 total USB 2.0 ports, and these red ones on the back deliver 4 times the power. I believe it's 4 times the power. Yes, and they are always on, so even if your power is off on the system, these are still enabled, so you can still power devices. and that allows you to charge devices 40% faster using these super powered USB 2.0 ports. So 2, 4, 6, 8, all the red ports you see here. 8 of those plus the 6 available via the headers on the motherboard gives you 14 total USB 2.0 ports. Right under these we see a green and purple PS2 port. That's for a mouse or a keyboard. Next to that we have a Toslink optical digital audio out, so you can connect that to a high definition stereo system if you so desire. Under these USB 2.0 ports right there we have a FireWire port, the red one right there. Down here at the bottom, this red port here and the blue port here are both eSATA ports. Again, these are 6 gigabit per second ports. Again, they are controlled by an add-on Marvell 88SE9172 chip. And so you have a total of 10 SATA 6 gigabit per second ports available on this motherboard. Moving along, over here we have USB 3.0 ports, the 2 blue ones right there. Right up here on top we have a gigabit LAN port that is powered by a Realtek RTL8111E chip. Then finally right here we have our audio outs, controlled by Realtek ALC889 codec. It's high definition audio, supports up to 7.1 channel audio out, as well as Dolby Home Theater and SPDIF out. And that wraps it up for the inputs and outputs on the back of the motherboard. Now real quick guys, since a lot of folks are a little bit curious, since the Am3 Plus motherboards are out, but the Am3 Plus CPUs are not out yet, people want to know what the compatibility is. So if you head over to the gigabyte.us website, click on support and downloads, and over here on the left you have a CPU support list. That will allow you to choose the socket you're running with, and for us right now we're going Am3 Plus. You also choose the chipset. For this motherboard we're a 990FX, and that will bring you up the current list of CPUs that are supported that are available right now. So right now we can see that there's lots and lots of Am3 CPUs supported by this socket and this chipset, all the way up to the Phenom 2 X6 1100T, and running down the list to your Phenom 2 X3s, X2s, and the Athlon 2s, and even a couple Semprons down there at the bottom. So the compatibility of your motherboard will be determined by the chipset as well as the BIOS version that is installed. So the BIOS version will be listed on the motherboard or when you're booting your computer, and most of these are all capable since the F2 revision of the BIOS or later. And that is going to do it for today's overview of this motherboard. Once again, this has been the Gigabyte 990FXA-UD5 featuring the Am3 Plus socket, 990FX Northbridge, and SB950 Southbridge. I'm Paul with Newegg TV. If you enjoyed today's video, please head over to our Newegg YouTube channel and don't forget to subscribe. Thanks a lot for watching, and we will see you next time.